Not only did Biden just bomb a foreign country without any authorization from our Congress or our Constitution, he also cited the United Nations as his authority for doing it. This is Deep State Tactics 101. Stay tuned and I'll tell you more. So our sleepy president, who literally doesn't remember what he's doing while he's giving speeches. True story. Check this out.
He was getting on a plane. He told me he came in to see me last event. And Representatives Shirley Jackson Lee, Al Green, Sylvia Garcia, Lizzie Pinelli, Pinell, and what am I doing here? I'm going to lose track here. And Mayor Turner.
All right, so he doesn't know what he's doing in the middle of one of his speeches last week. And this guy is now running around bombing foreign countries without any kind of declaration of war from Congress, without even one of those phony authorizations to use military force. And this is incredible, guys. And the thing that is most jarring about this is that in his official explanation for why he did this, he actually cited the United Nations. He wrote a letter to congressional leaders and said that it was the authority under the UN Charter that purports to allow this. Now, of course, the UN Charter is not the Constitution. He didn't swear an oath to the UN Charter. He put his hand on the Bible, at least that's what we were told, and he swore that he was going to defend and uphold the U.S. Constitution. Well, the U.S. Constitution says very clearly in Article 1 that Congress has the power to declare war. The president, therefore, and the courts, therefore, do not have the power to declare war. But be that as it may, Beijing Biden is trying his best to make more profits for the military-industrial complex and to accomplish more geopolitical aims for the deep state. So this is so serious that you even have some Democrats in Congress who are upset. Actually, former Congressman Ron Paul, a hero to many, many millions of liberty-minded constitutionalist Americans, has said that this is an impeachable offense to bomb a foreign nation without any authority to do so from Congress. But I want to go through this letter that Beijing Biden sent to Congress. Under the War Powers Resolution, he's required to explain to Congress after he does something, why he did it, where he did it, what he did, etc. And so in this letter, he said that he ordered the U.S. military to, and I'm quoting here, conduct a targeted military strike against infrastructure in eastern Syria used by Iran-supported non-state militia groups. Okay, that sounds cute. What he didn't mention is that this alleged bombing of infrastructure also killed at least 22 people. Okay, his justification for doing this was that supposedly some guy who supposedly was in a militia launched a rocket at an airport in Iraq, and apparently a U.S. soldier was hurt, and some Filipino guy who I guess was on a contract with the U.S. government was killed. And that's what they're telling us. We have no idea if that's actually true. If you believe the government when they tell you something, I wonder where you've been for the last 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 years. There's very few people I would trust less than the Biden administration to tell us what happened. Then the really, really chilling part in this letter, and you can get a copy of it. It was written to Speaker Nancy Pelosi and the President of the Senate, Patrick Leahy. He says here, and I'm quoting, "The United States took this action pursuant to the United States' inherent right of self-defense, as reflected in Article 51 of the United Nations Charter." Okay, as if the UN Charter, a document that was literally written by a cabal of communists and occultists and even our guy, right, Alger Hiss, the State Department operative who was in charge of the commission that wrote this UN Charter. He chaired the commission. We put him in prison afterward because he was a spy for Joseph Stalin, was also one of these corruptocrats, and he actually took down all these delegates to the UN meeting where they created this UN Charter down to the Bohemian Grove. If you haven't seen our episode on Bohemian Grove, you need to go watch it because that helps really understand, I think, what's going on with the UN. Very, very weird things going on there. 2,500 of the most powerful people on the planet. They got a big stone owl, and they burn what they claim is an effigy of a child.
Great owl of Bohemia, we thank thee for thy adoration. Begone, dull care. Fire shall have its will of thee. Begone, dull care. And all the winds make merry with thy dust. Hail, fellowship's eternal flame. Once again, make midsummer sets us free.
All right, so that's the people who wrote the UN Charter, right? Chaired by Soviet spy Alger Hiss, who was convicted and put in federal prison. Okay, now the idea that the UN Charter gives the United States a right of self-defense is simply preposterous. The United States has a right to self-defense because it is a nation, not because it signed on to a silly document written by a bunch of communists and occultists and totalitarians. That's preposterous. But even more than that, this UN Charter does not purport to grant President Biden any authority to bomb anyone or anything. Our Constitution is still the supreme law of the land, and our Constitution says that you need permission from Congress if you want to get involved in a war. We don't need a UN Charter to justify our right to self-defense. What you need, if you want to bomb people, is permission from our Congress. Now, if you actually look at Article 51 of the UN Charter, it actually purports to limit the power of nations in responding to attacks. It says, and I'm quoting here, for example, that a nation has a right to respond, quote, until the Security Council has taken measures necessary to maintain international peace and security. So once the Security Council takes some measure, undefined, then suddenly we lose our right to defend ourselves, right? Can you imagine if missiles started raining down on America and we said, hey, the UN Charter gives us the right to self-defense, and then the UN Security Council says, we've taken measures necessary to maintain international peace and security, and so you no longer can defend yourself, right? That's how silly this is. That's how idiotic this is, and that's how subversive this is. If you go on in Article 51, the same article requires or purports to require that any actions taken by our government be immediately reported to the United Nations Security Council. It says the actions shall be immediately reported to the UN Security Council. And the Biden administration did immediately report to the Security Council. In fact, it seems like they were more interested in reporting to the Security Council than to our elected representatives in Congress. Because, you know, Kim Jong-un and the communist regime in Cuba and the mass murdering dictatorship in China, they all have more of a right to know what's going on than our Congress and our elected representatives, who are, of course, supposed to be representing the people who are paying the bills for all this nonsense, okay? So they did send that letter over to the UN Security Council, and they said, pursuant to Article 51, we think we have a right to bomb people in Syria because, hey, Article 51 gives us self-defense, and hey, somebody launched a firework at an airport in Iraq. So, what, you know, how can you not say that's self-defense, right? It's, I mean, if you don't see the logic in that, you might be a dangerous conspiracy theorist subversive, at least in the minds of people like John Brennan, the former head of the CIA and self-proclaimed former communist. Okay. Now, even if you accept for the moment, for the sake of argument, that the UN Charter is legitimate, whether Article 51 actually even applies here would be an open question. We really don't know. If you look at the text of that, it says that the right to self-defense is only in response to, quote, an armed attack against a UN member state. And, you know, when normal people think about an armed attack against a UN member state, normally you're thinking of, like, you know, troops coming across the border with tanks and weapons or missiles raining down on your cities, right? You're not thinking about somebody launching a firecracker at an airport on the other side of the planet where a U.S. soldier has no business, where apparently he got a little bit hurt. Okay, that's not what normal people would think about when they think of an armed attack on your nation. Iraq is not our nation, okay? Period, end of discussion. And so whether this was actually even legitimate under Article 51 remains to be seen. And that's even assuming that you agree that Article 51 or the UN Charter are legitimate. I would submit to you that that's ridiculous. Just because the Congress has authorized participation in the United Nations doesn't mean that the UN Charter supersedes our Constitution. If they want to alter our Constitution, we have a process for that. They can submit amendments. If they don't like the fact that Congress is supposed to declare war, not the United Nations, not the president under Article 51 of the UN Charter, they can submit amendments and they can ask the American people, do you think that the UN Charter should govern when we go to war? Do you think that the UN Security Council should be able to send our troops into war? Do you think that we should get rid of that responsibility from Congress and give it to the UN or the president? And I think sensible Americans would say no. That's absolutely ridiculous. And yet that's exactly what's happening. Now, if you look at Article 51, it also opens the door wide open for globalist deep state intervention in Syria. For example, in the Article 51, it says that the authority and responsibility of the Security Council under the present charter to take at any time such actions as it deems necessary in order to maintain or restore international peace and security. Did you catch that? Any actions that it deems necessary in order to maintain or restore international peace and security. In other words, if the UN feels like, hey, we're going to send troops from all over the world into such and such place, maybe New York, maybe Kansas, to maintain peace and security, then hey, we'll do that, right? And if you know anything about the UN peacekeeping troops, that should horrify you. Go back and watch our episode that we did recently on the UN's peace troops. They are warmongers. They are child rapists. 60,000 women and children raped by UN troops just in the last decade alone, based on the UN's own numbers, as determined by a team of former high-ranking UN officials. Let that sink in, guys. These are the ones that the UN claims the authority to deploy anywhere at any time if the UN Security Council deems it necessary. So let's talk about the UN. Okay, let's talk about these agreements and statutes and treaties that purport to give legitimacy to this abomination. Thomas Jefferson made it very clear that the U.S. government could not assume new powers just by accepting a treaty. If that were the case, then what would be the point of having a constitution, right? If you want new powers for the federal government, you need to have a constitutional amendment. The Supreme Court upheld that idea in 1957 in Reed versus Covert. The U.S. government cannot grant itself new powers by signing on to an international agreement or treaty. Just like Biden cannot usurp the power to declare war from Congress because the UN Charter Article 51 says that a nation has a right to self-defense. Right? This is idiotic in the extreme, guys, but the fake media is not talking about it because, of course, they are all tools of the deep state. Also, in Article 51, by citing that, Biden clearly ignored the Constitution, and then he cited a bunch of imaginary authorities. He said, I directed this military action consistent with my responsibility to protect United States citizens both at home and abroad in furtherance of United States national security and foreign policy interests. Pursuant to my constitutional authority to conduct United States foreign relations and as commander-in-chief and chief executive. Now, it is true that when Congress declares war, the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. However, without a congressional declaration of war, Biden has no authority whatsoever to order U.S. troops to bomb other people, to start wars in other countries, period, end of story. Biden also mentioned the War Powers Resolution, which purports to authorize military action for up to 60 days if the United States is attacked. The key word there being if the United States is attacked. In fact, the militia that supposedly launched a rocket at an airport in Iraq that hurt a U.S. soldier, they actually said we didn't do that. Okay, and with the long history of false flag operations, Operation Mongoose, Operation Northwoods, even the recent stuff that happened in 2017 under Trump, where they staged an obviously phony chemical weapons attack and tried to blame Assad when clearly it was a false flag, and even the UN's investigators determined as much. That makes me real suspicious when the warmongers who've been lying to us for all these years, the same people who told us there was weapons of mass destruction in Saddam Hussein's arsenal and not the ones that we sold him, right? Those are the same people telling us these things. So, guys, we're being deceived. We're being lied to. And in any case, that War Powers Resolution actually requires the administration to brief Congress. And so far, no lawmakers have actually been briefed. They had a briefing for staff members, right? But Congress members were not invited, our actual elected representatives. So Congressman Ron Paul, again, superhero in the liberty movement, wonderful, wonderful guy. Sometimes his articles appear at the New American. He was actually the speaker at the John Birch Society's 50th anniversary dinner, keynote speaker. That was, I think, the first time I met him in person, or maybe the second, but wonderful man. He said, in fact, initiating a war against a country that did not attack and does not threaten the United States without congressional authority is an impeachable offense. Okay. He also said that President Biden should be impeached for his attack on Syria, as should have Trump and Obama before him. Okay. Even some Democrats in Congress, like I mentioned, are a little bit upset about this. Representative Ro Khanna of California said that, hey, we need to stop doing this without congressional authorization. This is not what we ran on. Senator Tim Kaine, pretty radical left-wing Democrat, and he also said the American people deserve to hear the rationale for this, for acting without Congress. Offensive military action without congressional approval is not constitutional. Okay, absent extraordinary circumstances. Now, Representative Thomas Massie, one of the best in Congress based on his Freedom Index score, he said that when President Trump launched an attack against an Iranian general in Iraq, the Democrats offered a resolution to assert that any further attacks against Iran would require the proper approval of Congress. And the Democrats did good. That's true. Right? There's no authority to be launching missiles at other people. Massie was just one of a handful of Republicans who backed that resolution. But then Massie goes on to say, now that President Biden has launched an attack directed toward Iran in a sovereign country without permission, I wonder if Speaker Pelosi will be consistent and offer a similar resolution to assert the constitutional authority of Congress to decide when we go to war. And as much as I like Congressman Massie, he's a regular guest on our program here at the New American, I'll tell him, don't hold your breath, Congressman. The Democrats are not known for their consistency. They are known for their hypocrisy. And unfortunately, the war party, which very much includes the establishment in both parties, that's their thing, right? But even Jen Psaki, Jen Circleback Psaki, Biden's mouthpiece, she said in 2017, when Trump launched a missile at an airstrip in Syria, what is the legal authority for these strikes? She said, yeah, Assad is a brutal dictator, but Syria is a sovereign country. Oh, if only they had principles and remained consistent. It would be so nice. Kamala Harris in 2018, when Trump launched a missile at that Iranian general, said Trump needs to lay out a comprehensive strategy in Syria in consultation with Congress, not just bombing willy-nilly. Guys, this is a crisis. The deep state is once again trying to use our military, our armed forces, our economic might to remove governments that they don't like, to reshape the world, and now increasingly to empower the UN by making it look like the UN gives the United States the authority to go to war, not our Constitution, not our Congress, not the American people. So it's bad enough to abuse America's military like this. It's bad enough to send our sons, our daughters, our brothers, our sisters into harm's way in these pointless illegal wars. It's bad enough to bomb a foreign country without constitutional or congressional permission. It's bad enough to be a raging, lying hypocrite. But then to go and cite the UN Charter as the justification for this abomination is beyond inexcusable. It's a disgrace. The Biden administration must be held accountable by Congress, by the courts, and by the American people. Otherwise, the deep state war party is going to get us involved in even more of these illegal wars, and that will limit our freedom, destroy our economy, and end up producing a lot of dead bodies. That's what the deep state specializes in. We got to stop these people, folks. If you've enjoyed this, please go over to thenewamerican.com. Share this out because YouTube and Facebook are not going to help. In fact, they hate us, and we're proud of that. What would we be if they didn't hate us, right? We'd be controlled opposition or worse, toadies for the establishment. So please share this out. Thank you guys for watching. Please take action, and God bless you all. If you liked this video, then click that subscribe button with the little bell. If you didn't like this video, you're probably a member of the deep state. Am I wrong? Prove it. Hit the subscribe button. Just kidding. Thanks again, folks. God bless.